former players, Jeff Bagwell, the longtime Houston Astro, to your right, Tim Raines in the old Expos Baby Blues to your back, and Pudge Rodriguez, one of the best two-way defensive catchers and offensive catchers of all time, over to your left. We also have two non-players joining us in the Hall of Fame this year. Bud Selig, the longtime commissioner of baseball, as well as John Schuerholz, who is a general manager, best known for putting together the Kansas City Royals teams of the George Brett era, as well as the Atlanta Braves teams of the Sean Olaza and John Smoltz, Greg Maddux era. So I use this time to talk a little bit about the induction process for the Hall of Fame. It is a little bit dense, so I do ask that you try to keep quiet and listen carefully, and I will take questions on induction at the end. But the primary way by which players are inducted into the Hall of Fame is through a vote of the Baseball Writers Association of America. To be put on their ballot, you only have to meet 3 requirements to be considered for the Hall of Fame. First, you must have played 10 or more years of Major League Baseball. Second, you must have been retired for 5 or more years. And third, you must not be on Major League Baseball's ineligible list. To answer the Pete Rose question before it inevitably comes up later, the reason that Pete Rose is not considered at this time to be a candidate for the Hall of Fame is because he is on Major League Baseball's ineligible list. That list falls solely under the jurisdiction of the Commissioner of Major League Baseball. We work closely with them, so we choose to honor that list as well, and that is why we don't consider Pete Rose as a candidate at this time. The other notable names on that ineligible list primarily come from the 1919 Chicago White Sox team, better known as the Black Sox, who were accused of throwing that year's World Series. The most notable name on that team, arguably shoeless Joe Jackson. He too is on that ineligible list, and therefore at this time they are not considered for the Hall of Fame. If you meet those 3 requirements, 10 years in the majors, 5 years retired, and you're not on the ineligible list, you can be put on the Baseball Writers Association ballot. If you get 75% of that vote, you are inducted into the Hall of Fame. Your first year on the ballot, you get 75%, you're in. That's what Pudge Rodriguez did. He got just over 77% on his first year this past year. If you don't get all 75% right at the start, that is okay. You can stay on the ballot for up to 10 years as long as you receive at least 5% of the vote every year. So Tim Raines actually stayed on the ballot for the full 10 years, and this past year, in his 10th and final year, not only did he get 75%, he blew by 75% and actually got close to 86% of the vote. So
there are those, not every single player that plays 10 years being on the ballot.
that is correct. So the ballot is made by an executive committee of the Baseball Writers Association of America, and it is a fairly inclusive ballot. Anyone who they deem even has the slightest chance of being in the Hall of Fame will be put on the ballot, but not everyone who meets those requirements is automatically put on the ballot. The ballot typically has between 15 and 35 names in any given year, depending on how many names are added and how many holdovers there are from the year.
How many are you going to be this year?
I don't know how many will be on the ballot this year. Good question. Yes.
How many vote?
In terms of the Baseball Writers Association, it varies year to year based on how many writers are active at any time. Usually it's between 400 and 500. This past year, I believe the number was 457 voters. So to get in, you need about 315 to 320 total votes.
Can you speak to the new transparency rule that's going to take effect where writers are going to have to disclose their votes?
To be honest, I'm not familiar with that rule. I am not sure when that is going into effect, but if it is, then it sounds as though writers at this point are allowed to either publish their vote or keep their vote secret. If there is some sort of a transparency rule coming in, I would assume that that would mean that all writers would have to share their vote. So we'll see what happens with that. Are there any other questions about induction? Yes.
If one of the players played for 9 years, then in the beginning of the next year,
So that's a very good question. If someone only played for 9 years and then got injured in their 10th and final year, could they still be considered for the Hall of Fame? That's a really good question. The answer is yes, and we're going to talk about a special case a little bit later where something a lot like that happened. But there have been some exceptions to special cases. The thing that you will notice is that almost all of our players have a cap on. So prior to 2001, the players were allowed to choose what logo was placed on their caps. Since 2001, that ultimate decision actually lies with the Hall of Fame. The official reason for that change is that, as I mentioned at the beginning, our mission is to preserve history, and we wanted to make sure that players entered the Hall of Fame representing the team with which they made the most significant impact. The unofficial reason for that change was that in 1998, 1998, Wade Boggs signed a contract with the Tampa Bay Devil Rays, and the Devil Rays attempted to include a clause that would give Boggs a bonus if he chose to enter the Hall of Fame as a Tampa Bay Devil Ray. Obviously, we don't want our museum to become something that is economized or that the players can get bonuses for, so we laid down the law and said, no, you can't just choose to do that. However, almost all of the time it does overlap with the player's wishes, and if a player does not wish to honor a singular team on his plaque, we do typically take that into account. The most recent example of that was Greg Maddux, who obviously pitched for several different teams. He said to the Hall of Fame, we have Cubs fans, I don't know if we have any Braves fans on the tour, but he basically said, I played for a lot of teams, I love all of my fans everywhere, I don't want to just pick one team and risk alienating those other fans. So we accepted that, and if you look at Greg Maddox's plaque, it does not have a logo on it. The first one relates to your question earlier. So the first story with Roberto Clemente is, as you may know, and you may not know, but I'll tell you now, Roberto Clemente died in a plane crash New Year's Day 1973. He had not officially retired. So he did play more than 9 years, but he couldn't retire because he had passed away. So the Baseball Writers Association said he'll never be able to retire. We want to be able to vote on him this very same year and induct him. And the Hall of Fame agreed to that. He went on the ballot that very same year and was inducted in 1973. The other exception to the 5-year rule was Lou Gehrig, who we brought in prior to that 5-year period because he was very sick with ALS, now known as Lou Gehrig's disease, at the end of his career, and we wanted him to be able to be alive and present. However, when Jackie was inducted to the Hall of Fame, he came to us and said, I don't want any special treatment on my plaque. All of the other players' plaques talk about what they did on the field. With John Clarkson, it talks about how many no-hitters he threw, how many strikeouts he had, what his winning percentage was. It doesn't talk about him being an upstanding guy or a good person. Not that he wasn't, but that's not what our job is. Our job is to honor excellence and preserve the history of the game of baseball. So Jackie said, don't talk about me as a historical icon or a civil rights pioneer, just the Baseball Hall of Fame. Talk about me as a baseball player. We agreed, and his plaque went up accordingly. In 2008, Jackie had since passed away. His wife Rachel came to visit us, and we approached her and said, in line with our mission, which is, like I said, to honor excellence and preserve history, we feel as though it would be remiss to not include a note of what Jackie Robinson meant, not just to the game of baseball, but to American history on and off the field. And we requested to slightly change his plaque to acknowledge that. Rachel agreed, so in 2008, we recast Jackie's plaque with the exact same text as before, with the exception of this final sentence, which says, displayed tremendous courage and poise in 1947 when he integrated the modern major leagues in the face of intense adversity. No other plaque in this gallery talks about courage and poise or facing adversity. And it's not because other players did not face that, but it is because so rarely does a baseball player go so above and beyond in his contributions to the entire world that we feel the need to note significant contributions beyond the field itself. Jackie Robinson is a very special case for that reason, and his plaque is a very special one to us here. They are actually carved from a single piece of wood. It is not several pieces stuck together, it is a single piece. So if you have
Babe Ruth and Ted Williams. Huh?
This is all one piece.
Which shows that.
We'll now talk back here about the 1936 first class of the Hall of Fame. As you might have heard me say earlier, our Hall of Fame did not actually open until 1939. So one of the best mysteries of the Hall of Fame, and something we don't actually know the definitive answer to, is where the plaques were from 1936 until the museum was built in 1939. Our best guess is that the founder of the Hall of Fame, a man by the name of Stephen Clark, probably just had them in his home somewhere. But we don't know for sure where those plaques were for those 3 years. We're just kind of happy we have them now. But these 5 names are hopefully names that everyone knows and recognizes. Christy Mathewson, Babe Ruth, Ty Cobb, Honus Wagner, and Walter Johnson. A question we get a lot is why Ty Cobb is placed in the middle. Knowing how induction works, you might actually be able to guess that it's because Ty Cobb got the most votes in that first class. He got about 98% of the vote, which was actually more than Babe Ruth did, which is a fun fact, especially for me as a Red Sox fan who presents Babe Ruth a little bit, that Ty Cobb was actually the first Hall of Famer. He snuck in with a little bit more of the vote than Babe Ruth did, and in fact, a fact that I learned just today and that I'll share with you all, Babe Ruth and Honus Wagner actually tied. They received the same number of votes. So Ty Cobb is clearly our first Hall of Famer, but if you wanted to have some debate as to who the second one, that would be up on the table. The other thing that I like to point out in this rotunda area is our 2006 class. You might have noticed that most of our alcoves talk about a few different years in each of them. We had 1971 to 73 where Clemente was. We had 54 to 62 where Jackie Robinson was. 2006 has an entire alcove to itself, as well as parts of 2 other alcoves. The reason being, in 2006, we inducted our largest class in history. We had 18 new members that year. And the reason that class was so large was because in 2006, we appointed a special committee on the Negro Leagues. That committee focused on Negro League players, managers, owners, and so on, who made contributions to the game that, looking back on them historically, deemed them as merited candidates for the Hall of Fame.
Baseball Hall of Fame. I wanted to be in it for a very long time. Got to see already some of these fullbacks. Roberto Clemente. And on him, some of our all-time favorites. These are the balls of all the plots here.
I'm going to go through this quickly.
We have Jacob Robinson over here. We did have our whole family here, but at least we have Shuli. Shuli's sticking it out for the long term.
Was sticking out.
Everybody else ran away. That's where the 2017 inductees will be. Here we have some famous Braves. John Smoltz. We got Maddox in the Tubman Brave, Glavin, Bobby Cox. Sports Heroes under Dawson.
And this is the first class. There's the big.
First class. Hans Wagner, Babe Ruth. These wooden statues of the veterans were made out of Columbus wood to make Shazam, Braves, Cubs, and the White Sox. You see which members are retired, some did the World Series, and some artifacts. And you have this section here. Babe Ruth. Memorabilia from his time. His glove. Here is a section of the White Sox from 1918. Section on the Negro Leagues.
White Sox from Chicago.
Yeah. This is the initial induction ceremony. Women in baseball.
That's cool.
My aunt says that was cool. That Viva Baseball is about Latin American influence. You can watch all sorts of fun and exciting things. My aunt keep coming with me.
Wait, where is his helmet?
World Series.
Joe Carter winning a home run to win the game in the World Series. There's no crying in baseball. Look in pink up there, my aunt. There's no crying in baseball. Here we have the PED era. 1998, Cecil McGuire. We got about the Yankees keeper.
I will go into this. Ice bucket.
What's that? From the Ice Bucket Challenge?
I don't know why.
Okay. This had Harry Carey's 7th inning stretch. Somebody else singing.
Hey, I'm looking. Oh, no.
All about Hank Aaron over here. These are all the different records. Batting records, Pete Rose, Ichiro, Joe DiMaggio, pair of pitching records, how many strikeouts in a game, all-time active stolen bases, hits, most in a career, other pointless records. World Series results. World Series after the Enzo list. The trophy.
Look it up.
You gotta see him jumping. There's pictures of him jumping.
Game 7. The World Series. And the Exhibit 4.
Puts the ball in the pocket.